breaking down the Vikings from the perspective of a former NFL General Manager of the Year. It's Jeff Diamond's Purple Report, presented by your select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers.
Welcome to Jeff Diamond's Purple Report, brought to you every Monday and Thursday during the Viking season by your select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers and the 2024 GMC Sierra on 1500 ESPN, available 24/7 on YouTube via links from the 1500 ESPN and Score North websites. I'm Jeff Diamond, former Vikings GM, former Tennessee Titans president. Our producer is Sam Bird, does a fantastic job putting our show on the air, getting all these great highlights of Kirk Cousins and company and Vikings highlights and the big game coming up this week. Sam, I think when the NFL schedule came out back in May and we all saw Vikings and Falcons in week 14 after Kirk had signed with the Falcons, everybody kind of circled this on their calendar as a game of high interest, except perhaps the NFL and the networks, since it's a Sunday noon game, which I can't really understand why you wouldn't want to put that game in prime time, even as a flex game, that they can flex games now, even Monday night games. And instead we got Cincinnati at Dallas on Monday night, really? 4-8 against 5-7. And here you got the 10-2 Vikings and the 6-6 Falcons, who are trying to hang on to first place in the NFC South, and the Vikings trying to stay close to the Lions. And by the way, Sam, I don't know if you noticed, I have my green sweater on today.
I see that.
And the reason for that is, on the rare occasion that I actually cheer for the Green Bay Packers, who are playing the Detroit Lions tonight in the Thursday night game. And we talked about this a little bit the other day, and certainly the Vikings would hope that the Packers win this game so they have a chance to tie for first place. But even if Detroit wins, I think the Vikings still win because they knock Green Bay further down, gives the Vikings a chance to take a 2-game lead in the wild card race for that first wild card that is really an important spot to get an advantageous first-round matchup. So, but it's Kirk Cousins coming to town, and I think it's going to be a very exciting game come Sunday at US Bank Stadium.
Absolutely. I thought the same thing when this game was on when the schedule came out, right? I thought the same thing you did. And there's just been so many layers of intrigue around not only Cousins returning to the Vikings, but just all the quarterback controversy back in the draft with Penix. And then all the questions around, did Cousins make the right decision? Did the Vikings make the right decision? I think you're starting to see a lot of that shake out now over the course of the summer and over the course of the season. But it's just, even still, I think there's a lot of people, including myself, that are really interested to see how this plays out.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting to me, too, is how predictions can be so foolhardy because the preseason thought was, okay, Kirk Cousins is going to Atlanta. They had quarterback issues last year, and that's why they had a losing season. He's going to be the missing link to take them to the playoffs, take them for the first time since 2016, win the AFC South, first time in the playoffs since 2017. The Vikings were supposed to be an also-ran team with the hope that they could have maybe a 9-8 season, and that the expectation was J.J. McCarthy, the first-round pick, would take over for Sam Darnold early in the season. Well, what's happened? The Vikings are 10-2. Sam Darnold is having a great season, his career year. He's ranked 7th in passer rating. And the Falcons with Cousins got off to a decent start. They were 6-3, swept Tampa Bay, but they're on the skids right now. They've lost 3 straight. Cousins is playing terrible. He's got no touchdown passes, 6 interceptions the last 3 games, threw 4 picks against the Chargers last week. And to me, he's one of the very disappointing free agent signings right now when you look at what the expectations were in Atlanta and what they paid him, which is $45 million a year with $100 million guaranteed. So, hey, it's totally reversed of what the thought process was, that the Vikings would struggle, the Falcons would be on the rise, and it's the opposite of that right now going into Sunday's game. That is really huge for both teams. Vikings need to stay close to the Lions and ahead of the Packers, And the Falcons now have fallen into a first-place tie with Tampa Bay, who has a more favorable schedule down the stretch. So it's a big game. Both teams have a lot of playmakers on both sides of the ball. It's at home for the Vikings. The home crowd has a chance to make an impact. How does Kirk react to that? How does he react to his 3 straight losses? A lot of things in play here. Let's hear from Kevin O'Connell as he talked about Cousins' return this week.
I just know how impactful of a player he is from what he's doing right now as far as his preparation for the game and how he's done a really good job with that group of skilled players and kind of getting a lot of guys involved and running the show. And what is a new offense, there's probably a lot of characteristics that we're able to carry over for him with Zach coming from a similar background that I came from when we came here. But what I thought, what Kirk did best, over the 2 years is just the dialogue and the connection that him and I had to try to build our version of the offense here, and then his ownership of that, being really good end of game situations and totally taking us, bringing us back in many instances in 22, and then just how he was able to, even despite the injury last year, just still continue to have a positive impact on this building and his teammates. So it's going to be a challenge. He's going to be very accurate. He's going to throw with great timing and rhythm. He's going to get the ball out. And when he does, it's going to be going to the right guy. And we got to be, all 11 mentality every single snap.
Harrison Phillips has had a very good year as an interior defensive lineman, and Vikings recently extended his contract, which was deserved. He's a team leader, does great things in the community. And he was pretty close with Kirk Cousins when he was here. Had some interesting thoughts on Cousins coming back to face the Vikings.
He is who he is for a reason. He's one of the best in the game, puts the ball wherever he wants to, makes all the checks, knows all the right reads, knows his full progression, knows where the weak spots are, and is also a great guy. So it'll be fun, and I can't wait to play him.
How do you balance out just having known him as a teammate and watching him every day in practice and also scouting him as a Falcon now?
Some of the buddies are making jokes that if I do end up getting to get a hit on him, I can't help him up apparently, but I still might put my hand out and see. I mean, it's too good of a guy. But once you get across those white lines, the competitive juices flow. I mean, this is a playoff type game. This is a playoff atmosphere, playing at home in December, this late in the season. So once that adrenaline stuff comes, you're very civil and very friendly, but it's also like an extremely violent and competitive sport. So it's an easy switch.
Kirk Cousins had a lot of good moments in Minnesota, had a lot of moments where he was questioned, and especially during some of the years the Vikings were closer to 500 until that 2022 breakthrough under O'Connell. So there was always kind of a mixed feeling about him, I think, among the fan base and even among coaches such as Mike Zimmer from time to time. But certainly he had a lot of big moments here and a lot of success. And here was, going back a few years, I think the biggest highlight of Kirk Cousins' 6 years in Minnesota, the 2019 wild card playoff game against New Orleans. And here's the walk-off touchdown pass he threw.
Cousins throws, pass is caught for the win. Kyle Rudolph and the Vikings are moving on.
That was a great moment after a really good season. Kirk, as we said, 2022, he was lights out. All the one-score wins come from behind wins, whether 8, I think, come from behind victories that year, and then got into the playoffs and had the down game against the Giants with the check down to Hawkinson at the end, which I think really soured a lot of people. Then he gets off to a good start last year and then tears his Achilles. So a lot of things have gone into the Kirk Cousins narrative, shall we say?
Yeah.
And even this year for him, I've seen Kirk and watching a lot of that game against the Chargers, just didn't look as mobile. He was never a mobile quarterback. Looks even less mobile now.
Yeah.
Not able to move very well on bootlegs or even in the pocket. He's not running at all. He used to at least scramble occasionally. which could make him really a sitting duck for the Vikings defense, and especially the edge rushers such as Grenard and Van Ginkel, Pat Jones, Dallas Turner, and these guys have been chasing Caleb Williams and Kyler Murray the last 2 weeks. Now they get a statue basically in Cousins, although I expect Kirk to get the ball out very quickly in this game.
Kind of takes you back to how Flacco, the game on Sunday night against the Colts a few weeks ago, Flacco was kind of a statue, especially at the end of the game, and the defense just turned up the pressure on him to the point where they just weren't able to get anything going at the end of that game.
Yeah, and I think that could be a similar type situation come Sunday. We'll see. Kirk Cousins talked to the media in Atlanta this week, and here are some of his thoughts on playing his former team.
A year and a half ago is like an eternity in pro football, and so I think the way they've changed their personnel, the way they've evolved, the way at the time those players were playing the scheme for the first time, I think now many of those players who would still be there are so much more experienced in the scheme as well. So for all those reasons, I do think that you can't draw as much as you'd like to, but I have a lot of respect for Coach Flores and for that group and for the guys in that team. Their production and their record and all of that is what it is for a reason. They've earned it and they've played well and they've been a challenge for people, and so we understand that challenge when we go there on Sunday.
This isn't your first time going back to a place you played before, but does this one feel weird at all? Just when you talked about wanting to stay with the Vikings and hoping it would work out that way, and does it feel weird to be going back as a visitor for this one?
Well, it's certainly unique. It's not like everywhere you play on the road you've spent 6 years there. But with Washington and Minnesota, that is the case, and so we go to both those places this year, and so certainly you'll have memories come back to you when you're in both places. But it's a part of the deal, and I think for so many players in this league, we've all kind of been on other teams. It's rare to play double-digit years with one team. So, for so many of us, it's kind of the way of life when you play in this league.
We're going to check out some more highlights of Atlanta, some good and bad of Kirk Cousins, and make our predictions, talk about some other big games around the league. It's a little bit of a mundane weekend, but there are a few big games, and the Vikings actually have a chance to clinch a playoff spot. We'll talk about what the formula is to do that. But first, I'm going to talk about our great sponsor, the Select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers. There are trucks, then there's the truck, GMC Sierra, with available features like the V8 engine, the ultimate luxury interior, and of course, the available world's first 6-function multi-pro tailgate. GMC Sierra, not just any truck, the truck. GMC's continued commitment to professional-grade engineering is on full display at your Select Minnesota GMC dealers. Stop by and choose from our wide selection of colors, models, and trim levels. Our friendly sales professionals are ready to work with you so you drive home happy with not just any deal, the deal. So come take a test drive today. We are professional-grade GMC. Well-qualified buyers get 0% APR on 2024 GMC Sierra light-duty models. See your Select Minnesota GMC dealers today. Length of contract limited. Some customers will not qualify. Not available with lease and some other offers. Take new retail delivery by 1/2/25. As we said, the Falcons up and down season this year under new coach Raheem Morris, new quarterback Kirk Cousins. Here was an up moment for the Falcons. Week 5 against Tampa Bay. They rallied to win this game in overtime. Cousins, wow, he went off. 509 yards passing in the game. And here was the walk-off touchdown.
Mooney moving. That's fired, that's caught, and that is Hodge. And Hodge is going to take it to the end zone.
That was a big win for Atlanta over their division rival Tampa Bay. That was a high point for their season. As we said, there have been some down moments, too, recently. And most recently last week when the Falcons lost 17-13 to the Chargers. As we said, Cousins threw 4 interceptions. And here was the worst of the bunch.
Yeah.
It was a pick 6. And just watch how this ball is kind of floated out to the flat.
4th and 5. Cousins And intercepted. This could go all the way. It's gone. Still, you can kiss him goodbye. Touchdown.
That was Tarheeb Still for the Chargers, and that was the game-winning play in that particular football game for the Chargers. A positive moment for them in that particular game was this sack of Justin Herbert by a couple of really good players for the Atlanta defense. As I said, there's a lot of talent on this team. Jesse Bates, one of the best safeties in the league, one of their leading tacklers. Grady Jarrett is a multi-Pro Bowl defensive tackle who is going to give the Vikings interior offensive linemen a lot of trouble in this game. They're going to have to do a very good job blocking him. And Caden Ellis is also their leading tackler. Jarrett and Ellis combined to sack Herbert here.
Find it loose. 2nd down 8. Oh, here they come. Herbert's down. Jarrett was there and coming through. Caden Ellis.
So that's a couple highlights of the Atlanta Falcons offensively, defensively. As we said, a lot of talent on that team. Bijan Robinson, a guy the Vikings are going to have to make a concerted effort to stop. They need to play the run a little bit tougher. They're still the number 1 rush defense in the league, but gave up 154 yards to Arizona last week. Yeah. And James Conner had a good day. Now, 48 of those yards were by Kyler Murray. They don't have to worry about the quarterback running this week. But Bijan Robinson, a dual threat running back for Atlanta. He's ranked in the top 10 in rushing in the league, well over 800 yards. That's going to be a challenge. I think a couple other keys to this game, they're going to have to protect Darnold better than they did last week. The offensive line and pass protecting allowed 5 sacks, and a lot of them were on free runs from blitzers.
Yep.
I think what will help that cause is the return of Josh Oliver this week, and he is expected to come back from his ankle injury. I think that he's one of the best pass protecting tight ends in the league, one of the best blocking tight ends in the league. He also has made a lot of big plays in the passing game as a receiving tight end this year. So that will help the cause, definitely. But those interior offensive linemen where a lot of those blitzes were coming have to do a better job. And we're talking about Bradbury, Brandel, and Reisner in this case come Sunday. The Falcons have only 15 sacks on the year. They're ranked last in the league, but they had 5 sacks last week of Herbert. So maybe they're figuring something out. Matthew Judon is a multi-Pro Bowl outside edge rusher, and he's a guy the Vikings are going to have to definitely be wary of in this game. I think a couple other keys, Sam, starting quicker. They were just very slow out of the blocks last week, outgained 228-75 in the first half by Arizona. Fortunately, the red zone defense was so good they held them to field goals, but that's going to be one of the keys. Speaking of field goals, another key is the potential return, and it sounds like he's going to return this week, of Will Reichard, the Vikings rookie kicker, who was perfect on the season until he pulled that quad muscle against the Colts and missed his only 2 field goals of the year. Parker Romo's done a great job. He did have a miss from 43 last week, and maybe that's what opened the door in Kevin O'Connell's mind to bring Reichard back, or maybe that was the plan all along. It was going to be a 4-week stint for Romo, bring Reichard back. We know Andrew DePaulo's coming back. They've already waived McQuaid, the other long snapper. But can Reichard pick up immediately and kick as well as he did earlier in the season when he's had this layoff? We'll see, and getting kicks deep in the end zone so there's no returns. Those are some of the keys to the game. As we said, also stopping the run better, pressuring Cousins, we know is going to be a key. And the Falcons are decent in terms of protecting him. They've given up 25 sacks, which is the 12th fewest in the league, but the Vikings 39 sacks, 4th most in the league. Ultimately, the turnover ratio is going to tell the story. That's the big, I think, differentiator between these two teams. And the Vikings are +5 in turnover ratio, Falcons -6, and a lot of that's been Cousins the last few weeks with his interceptions. Vikings lead the league in interceptions with 18. Cousins leads the league with 13 interceptions among quarterbacks. Sam Darnold conversely, has not thrown a pick the last 3 games after he had 10 in the first 9 games. He was up near the top of the board there, but now he's been more careful with the ball. I think that's got to continue. Speaking of turnovers, Aaron Jones, don't put the ball on the ground. And he talked about this week in the media sessions. He knows that he's got to do a better job. And if he doesn't, Cam Akers and Ty Chandler are going to be in there really quick. You can bet on that. But Aaron Jones is a really good player, but they can't have the fumbles that he's had this year. 5 fumbles, 3 lost fumbles. And so we'll see how that plays out. Jonathan Grenard has had a terrific year. He should be a Pro Bowl player for the first time in his career. He was just named NFC Defensive Player of the Week. And for his Defensive Player of the Month of November, for his great performance in November, that included leading the NFC with 8 tackles for loss. He had 4 sacks in the month, 16 tackles, helped the Vikings to a 4-0 month of November. Jonathan Grenard going to obviously be a key in putting the pressure on Kirk Cousins this week against that Falcons offensive line, very highly paid group that's pretty good, but we'll see what happens when they meet the Vikings and this great group of edge rushers led by Grenard. Here was, just to revisit that Cardinal game, here was his critical sack on 2nd and 5 in overtime that really, I thought, was one of the biggest plays in the game.
Expect a lot of different pressures from Minnesota coming here. It was Grenard that knocked it away. There's the pressure. There's the sack. First one of the day for the Vikings.
That set up 3rd and 13. On the next play, Grenard chased down Murray, showed his athleticism, and held him to a 3-yard gain, which created 4th and 10, and then the interception by Shaq Griffin. So a lot of good things happen in this game. Definitely. I think you look at the overall performance by the Vikings, and Griffin talked this week at his media session about the Vikings defense and how it's performing.
I feel like we got a mentality where, it doesn't matter who it's going to be. If everybody in the right spots, somebody's going to make a play. It's a very unselfish defense when it comes to that. And, when it comes to closing out games, it's everybody depending on each other. We got a type of defense that got that type of trust and faith in each other. We know somebody's going to make the play. We just got to be in the right spots and do our job. And when it comes to games like that, that's the ones who do it right the longest are the ones that usually win. And that's the type of defense that we just got.
A couple other things I want to see, Sam. Now, I found it kind of interesting that both O'Connell and Flores were talking up the performance of Fabian Moreau in place of Stephon Gilmore when Gilmore pulled his hamstring or strained the hamstring. There's a chance he could play. I would expect they'll probably hold him out this week, but which would probably put Moreau in that starting spot. Yeah. I was not quite as impressed, apparently, as they were with Fabian Moreau, who had 2 pass interference calls, gave up a touchdown pass to Marvin Harrison Jr. And I also didn't really like that he was in single coverage so often on Harrison and some of the other receivers for Arizona. I think if they have to start him, give him some help from the safeties. I know that when they go with their heavy blitz scheme, it puts those corners one-on-one, but maybe it's not a great idea to have Moreau one-on-one against Drake London or Darnell Mooney.
Right.
The other thing that I would also advise, not that anybody over there is going to listen, but Josh Metellus, he's a really good player, but not as great in single coverage necessarily on elite tight ends. And he was on Trey McBride last week a lot. McBride ends up with 12 catches in the game. Kyle Pitts was the 4th overall pick in 2021. Really an elite tight end, athletic tight end. Kind of strange he's only had 1 catch in the last 2 games, right, and only like 5 targets. But I would expect when the Falcons coaches look at the tape of the Arizona game and the success McBride had, I think we're going to see a lot of balls going to Kyle Pitts, especially because Cousins is going to want to get rid of the ball quick against that Vikings pass rush. And he's also going to be looking for Robinson out of the backfield. but they still have to cover London, Mooney. There's a lot of talent on that Atlanta offense and some good players on defense too. It's going to be an exciting game. Let's hear again before we go around the NFL and talk about some games coming up. And Sam and I are going to make our predictions. But let's hear from our great sponsor, the Select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers.
There are trucks. Then there's the truck, GMC Sierra, with available features like the V8 engine, the ultimate luxury interior, and of course, the available world's first 6-function multi-pro tailgate. GMC Sierra, not just any truck, the truck. GMC's continued commitment to professional-grade engineering is on full display at your local GMC dealer. Come take a test drive today and see for yourself. We are professional-grade. GMC. Well-qualified buyers get 0% APR for 36 months on GMC Sierra light-duty models. See your local GMC dealer today. Monthly payment is $28.16 for every $1,000 you finance. Average example down payment 15%. Some customers will not qualify. Not available with lease and some other offers. Take new retail delivery by 12/2/24.
I think another key to this game is going to be the home crowd. We've seen the effect they've had this year for the Vikings at home. Only one loss to the Lions in that narrow loss. And forcing false starts, the Cardinals had 4 last week. Among their 10 penalties, the Vikings have been doing a better job being more penalty-free, and they need to continue that. Of course, they only had 3 penalties last week, 2 of them by Moreau, as we mentioned before. So, predicting the outcome of this game, Sam, I like the Vikings.
Really?
I do.
There's a shocker, Jeff.
Yeah, although there could be a week where they may have a clunker, but hopefully it won't come at home. Hopefully it won't be this week.
Yeah.
And they can stay close to the Lions and ahead of the Packers. But I just think they'll do a better job against the run in this game. I think they'll put the heat on Cousins, who I see throwing not 4 picks, maybe 1 pick, because I think he's going to get the ball out quicker. And I think they can also strip sack him. He's had a lot of fumbles in his career. So I think Grenard, Van Ginkel can get to him, force some fumbles. The blitzers, Cashman, Metellus, Harrison Smith. I think that Reichard will outkick Koo of the Falcons, who has missed 8 field goals this year.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, which is not good. He's got 5 misses inside of 50 yards.
Wow.
So he's struggling this season. And if Reichard is fully healthy, or even if it ends up being Romo, I think they'll outkick Koo in this game. And I like the Vikings 24-17 to reach 11-2. How do you see it, Sam?
All right. Well, I think a lot of your points are dead on. I think this game is going to be a little bit of a wider margin than that. I think it's going to be 34-20, and I think what'll happen is Cousins will hold on to the ball maybe a little bit too long. He'll throw stuff away. I think he'll do just enough where he's not taking the big hits or he's not giving up a lot of interceptions like he did last week. But I think the crowd noise is going to be a factor. I think the Falcons offense is going to struggle. I think you're going to start to see some frustrations boil over, and all that just plays in the favor of the Vikings defense. So I think Justin Jefferson is overdue for a big game. I know he had 99 yards, but he's ready for a big one. I think he'll find the end zone more than once, hopefully. And I think that everything will just sort of fall into place in this game. The Falcons' record, I think, is a little misleading. I know that they're 6-6, but I think that their trajectory going into the later half of this season is starting to fade. And I think you're going to see that even more so this weekend.
Yeah, and I can see a lot of your points, and I think that Jefferson could have a big day, or Addison, Hawkinson. I don't think the Falcons' secondary is terrific. They're 22nd against the pass. Mike Hughes, former Viking, is a starting corner for them. I don't think he's a great player.
Right.
And Terrell is a high draft pick at the other corner. Jesse Bates, as we said, and Simmons, 2 really good veteran safeties. And so they'll be helping out over the top on Jefferson. We know that. But I think that the Vikings should emerge victorious in this game. We'll see how it plays out, but it will certainly be an exciting Sunday at US Bank Stadium. As I said, the Vikings have a chance to clinch a playoff spot. Now, obviously, they have higher aspirations. They want to stay on Detroit's right on their back and want to try to get to that last game in Detroit with the division title on the line. In order to do that, they probably can't even afford to lose any more games, maybe once, but probably not. And so the formula for this week, Vikings beat Atlanta.
Okay.
While Seattle wins at Arizona and Buffalo beats the Rams in L.A. Very feasible.
Yeah.
But I think that Arizona will take care of Seattle, and I do think Buffalo will beat the Rams, and I think the Vikings will win. So I think they'll get 2/3 of that puzzle and maybe have to clinch next week against the Bears on Monday night, which would be exciting too.
Yeah.
We'll see. But it's certainly possible that all three of those things can happen this week and the Vikings clinch that playoff spot. Other Sunday games, the Bears, they head to San Francisco, both teams struggling. I think that the Bears will lose their whatever 7th straight game. And the Chiefs and the Chargers in a big game on Sunday night. I like the Chiefs in that game. And we will be back on Monday to talk about the Vikings and the Falcons and what happened at US Bank Stadium against Kirk Cousins on Sunday. This has been Jeff Diamond's Purple Report, brought to you every Monday and Thursday during the Viking season by your select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers and the 2024 GMC Sierra on 1500 ESPN, available 24/7 on YouTube via links from the 1500 ESPN and Score North websites. This is Jeff Diamond with Sam Bird, and we will talk to you on Monday.